back from a 13-hour ride the other day, and I got it out in the sunlight this morning to assess the damage on it, and I figured this would make a pretty good educational video on what to look for after a strenuous ride, and pretty much just general maintenance when you're riding these things on the edge. You know, a lot of these things that I'm going to cover aren't things that concern the typical KLR rider who likes to, you know, just put a 17-tooth sprocket on it and cruise on the freeway. You know, I mean, nothing wrong with that, but it's this is for people who you know, get it muddy and push it to the limit. The issues I'll be addressing are caused by either rider error in the event of like a crash, or some of them are just general issues that occur when you're just riding on rough terrain, and bolts tend to fall out and could potentially leave you stranded or seriously injured when something fails. And I'll go over those first. And some that have happened to me personally are the subframe bolts, and you can see my lower subframe bolt. That's not a factory bolt, because it's on a trail somewhere where it fell out, and that's just from, you know, just heavy vibrations off the road, and they'll back out. That's why it's important to, when you buy a KLR, to buy a big tube of Loctite as well. And so you got the lower subframe bolt there, and up in here you can't hardly see it. I actually had to lift the gas tank up to get to it. That's the upper subframe bolt, and those bolts should be replaced with not only higher strength bolts, like these are, I got 10.9, they also make, like, what is it, the 12.1 grade bolts that are rated for however many pounds, and just make sure they're torqued properly and Loctited especially. Another bolt to look out for are these luggage rack mounts, especially if you have like heavy load. Not that I do, but I mean, I guess it was heavy enough to make it an issue with all the bouncing around on the trail. But I mean, just make sure those are tight. Make sure they're still there when you're at the end of the trail, because they will back out and fall out. And, you know, if this one were to fail, it causes pressure points on all the other mounting points. Like you see under here, the two other mounting points, these are aftermarket on mine. I drilled them out and put higher strength bolts in there. They come down from the top to help hold it in place. And also on the exhaust here, the mounting on the exhaust, those tend to vibrate out and fall out, and also where the header connects to the cylinder, those exhaust bolts will loosen up over time, and those won't only make your crush gasket wear out faster, but also will induce air into the exhaust system, making all that popping on deceleration and downshifting that no one really likes all that much. So make sure those are torqued correctly, not over torqued as well. Two more bolts that I had problems with on a different ride were the ones that hold the fairing assembly in place. I don't know if you can really see them that well, but they're two shiny. Yeah, you can see them. They're the two shiny nuts that I put on there. Those are stainless steel ones that I bought at the hardware store, and they just tend to back on out when you're riding over rough terrain, especially if you have a stock front suspension like I did it at the time, where, I mean, that tire can only soak up so much energy along with the stock forks on there. So it's definitely a good idea to get Progressive or all those other good brands out there that make aftermarket suspensions that help soak up the energy transferred back into these areas. Now, that wasn't something that left me stranded on the trail, but it was very annoying. This entire fairing was lifting up and vibrating, and so when I got on the highway, it was really awful when all the wind pressure was on the screen and blowing my fairing up. Now, some common things that break when you drop them. I think I have a pretty good background in this. I can say from experience what tends to break when you tip this thing over, you know. And number one on my book has always been this rear brake lever. It seems to just want to fold up like a pretzel every time I low side on it. But that's just a good reason to carry around some type of tool with you when you're on the trail. I got a pair of 460 channel locks, the bigger ones that you'll be able to manhandle it a little bit easier, or just use your foot to try to bend it back in place. The last ride, I also had my shift lever bend up, and this is the heavy duty, I believe IMS makes it. You also want to watch out for these foot pegs. They like to get caught on things when you drop it. And my left side, you can see I still have the stock bolts in there, but on my right side, I landed so hard on it that it broke the bolts completely out, just pulled them right out, and I had to re-tap it, and I used a 3/8 tap to go not only into this little welded on box that they have here, but I went straight into the frame as well, just to give that bolt something else to hold on to. And that may not be the preferred method. I know a lot of people use those Healy coils, but I didn't want to spend all that money on it, and I had a 3/8 tap, and it works. So there it is. Your handlebar controls are definitely some of the most important things that you want to protect on your bike, and they're also some of the most vulnerable. So it's imperative to have some kind of protection in front of them, and those stock plastic hand guards are not going to be enough. And if it's not there, it's going to be back here on your taillights. I can't tell you how many times I've had to fix these, but it's just one of those things that was made out of plastic, and it's going to take. And if you're doing any kind of trail riding, you will not be able to keep that stock license plate assembly that hangs down. I tried to just trim mine up when I first bought this bike to try to make it shorter, but if you're going to be flexing the suspension, that tire is going to rip your license plate off. So just go ahead and relocate it to this fender as soon as possible. Another thing, if you have the stock battery in here, or just any kind of wet cell battery, it's a good idea to take a look at those fluid levels when you get back, because that's one thing I always notice when I'm riding behind other riders. After we cross any kind of water crossing, all I smell is battery acid. So go ahead and get a sealed battery. I mean, they last longer, they have more starting power, and nowadays they're really not all that more expensive. Well, that should give you an idea of things to look for and things to address before they become problems if you're going to be riding these things aggressively. And with all that, my two favorite upgrades that I've ever made to this bike were the brake pads and the progressive springs in the front. And I'm sure if I got the one in the rear, I'd be praising that one too.